This is it.
It is?
It is.
Oh.
This is what we get.
Oh, a parting gift?
No, a moment in time.
Oh. Behind door number 1 or door number 2? I don't know. I'm feeling 2.
I don't know. I'll say 2, but I'll also say I don't think anybody who's listening gets that reference anymore.
Once again, we're talking about age. Hey, come on,
age,
man.
Well, yes, that's related to what we're talking about. But yes, we're talking about the freedom to live. And those who have some age have enjoyed that freedom for some time.
Yes.
Or have they? Or have they? That's partly what we're talking about in this final step of the hero's journey, the freedom to live. And it's getting at some lofty philosophical ideas, but to break it down more simply, it's about being content with where you're at, being in the moment, not being afraid of the future, not being regretful of the past. And I'll say this and be very careful, it's not embracing death, but it is instead accepting that and not being afraid of that, which is, I think something that everybody is afraid of. Right, I know I am.
Right,
I haven't achieved this ultimate state of acceptance.
No,
I don't want to die.
Nope, me neither.
And in our previous episode, we were talking about a few different ways that you can look at that in Eric's experience as well as my own, and we're going to continue to do so in part 2.
Ooh, okay then. You know what that means?
What? Well, I'm pretty dumb. You should know that by now.
It means let's get to it.
Oh, let's do that part.
Welcome to the Heart of the Cards, a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what we're dealt.
Hey, this is Dan Green.
And Eric Stuart.
Welcome back to the Heart of the Cards, episode 19, part 2 of the freedom to live.
Yes.
The final step of the hero's journey.
Ah, yes.
And what a journey it's been.
Yeah, it has been.
Let me ask you, we'll get further on into this conversation about this step, but looking back, what were some of your favorite steps?
Oh, my goodness.
Or conversations, I should say.
So, as I mentioned before, you really educated me on this entire concept from Joseph Campbell. I mean, obviously, these are parts of anyone's storytelling and someone's life, but when you start to describe it in this form, it's interesting to see how much of it really relates to real life. Some of it not, I did slay a couple of dragons here and there, but I think for me, if I were to pick a couple of key special favorite moments in the journey, it would be the call to adventure. For sure. I liked
Me too.
Sharing that with you, hearing your versions of that, hearing some of the guests that we had with their call to adventure. I'm always interested in where that original spark comes from. One of the things that I have tried to figure out in my own world is being someone who's adopted, who did not find blood relations till much later in my life. I grew up with that question mark of, is it nature over nurture? My mother being a dancer, yes, I was exposed to so much in the arts and then in performing, but, I also was drawing and I was interested in music and all of these things. Did that come out of the ether? Did it come out of the environment I grew up in? Or was it in my DNA? So I'm always curious of where people get that from. I thought that was a really interesting thing to discuss. I also liked the trials. I think discussing that we are not perfect and discussing that the things that we have to deal with that are maybe not the best situations or sometimes good situations. The trials can be something that you want to run that marathon. You want to get through that to prove yourself. I think that makes what we are as people, and I'm not talking about just you and I, but as people, that's part of the human experience as well. It's not just, as most people will know from Facebook or social media, people just promote how wonderful their lives are because that's what they would think everyone wants to hear. I think it's the other way around. I think you can definitely be talking about fun and good and happy, but you should also address the other stuff because that's where people connect and say, I know exactly what you mean. I've been there, or I can relate to that.
Sure.
So I thought that was a really great second thing to touch upon. And then I kind of like where we are, where we are now in terms of our discussion of being able to address that journey, the lessons learned from it, and are we at a place where we can step back and look at it almost as if we are someone reading someone else's story?
Having an objective appreciation?
Yeah, I just think that being able to do that one step back so that we can really just size it all up and say, yeah, okay, all of these things, this entire palette is what makes that person. Like these are the colors of this person's life. And that's interesting to me. It's almost like if you can get to that point, you almost could say that every person deserves their story to be told. Because you are looking at every aspect of it, and there's something to be gained from all of it. There's lessons, there's great memories, there's laughter, there's all of these things that make life in everyone's story.
Yeah.
And it's not just, it's not unique to the celebrities or whatever.
No.
It's not. It has nothing to do with that. It's like, you'll meet somebody just, you might be sitting next to them in a diner, at the counter, and you strike up a conversation and you start to discuss stuff and you learn something about someone and you think, my goodness, that's a movie, or like you should. That's a short story, or that's an incredible, tale that you've just told me.
Yeah.
Because we all have that, and when you can do that with yourself, when you can step back and say, okay, so this is I like this person's story. I find it interesting, and it took me on a journey myself. I was upset when they were going through tough times. I was happy for them when they were going through good times. And wow, I never thought of it that way, or I never, the philosophical approach that this person is taking with their life. That's interesting. I never looked at it that way. I think we are so self-involved sometimes as people that we do not pay attention to the people around us. We're not listening.
I know I am.
And
Did you say something?
Yeah, and I sometimes listen.
I've just been on Twitter since you started talking.
Lindsay has this great dig that she gives me. She goes, "I know you hear me, but are you listening?"
That's a good one.
Yes, right?
That's a good one.
And what about you?
Yeah, well, a couple of provocative things you mentioned there, and one of them I think pertains directly to the climate that we're in with other people, whoever those other people are. When you actually talk to somebody and you know them on a human level, a lot of that otherness, a lot of those categorical boxes we put people into falls away in a good way, in an essential way. And I think it's going to be so incumbent upon our moving forward together, not just as a culture of the United States or Western culture, as a whole species, as a whole people. The more that we can keep in mind that these universal aspects are within us, and it is an unbreakable part of the human condition. And it's been said many times before, but it's worth repeating. We are so much more alike than we are different. We all understand love and loss and pain and hope and fear. And these myths are ways of participating with those feelings, those ideas, those journeys, those calls to adventure and trials. And that's why it's relatable not just to people that you're alive on the planet with at the same time, but relatable to people that you will never know personally because they existed eons before and are part of the chain of life that you are now a link in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why these resonate profoundly, through people. And again, I wish that we lived in a time where people were more open to getting to know each other and listening and not just hearing,
Yes,
right?
yes.
As Lindsay might put it. Not to say that the differences won't exist, but they will exist upon a foundation of mutual respect, or at least more respect, right?
Yes.
Than they would have otherwise. There are very, very few people in the world who are, quote unquote, evil.
Right.
We often encounter that because of our different perspective on certain issues, right?
Yes.
I mean, I can think of one or two people.
Yes.
but
Yes.
but for most people, that's not the case.
No. And as long as disagreements are one thing, or seeing things from different
Sure.
perspectives, but it's always, if you can't have a conversation with me or even a respectful debate about an issue, the minute it goes low
Right.
you start to, yell and scream or use profanity or call me names, you've lost. You've lost.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and we are we are at that point now where so much of that is what goes on rather than even trying to listen to someone else.
Right. Right. But to answer the question of like what were some of my favorite steps in this journey, I'm right with you in terms of the call to adventure. That's so essential. And it's fun to ask that question to other people because you can often hear or see if you're, with them in person, they light up a little bit, right? They and it's an infectious spark. And so the trials also is something I match with you on. And again, I think it's because it's so relatable. We all understand what that is, even though we all have them in myriad different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's relatable throughout time. Also, I enjoyed the meeting with the goddess conversation. It actually connected me to a part of my history that I hadn't really looked at as specifically.
Right.
And so while it's an experience I've long known, it gained a different value in reconnecting with it and talking about how my acting teacher addressed me when I was about to get myself expelled.
Right. Right.
And the second part of that conversation, I talked about making this Indiana Jones adventure.
I loved
for a
that.
friend of mine.
I love that.
She sent it. She sent me a digitized version of that. I hadn't seen that in, I don't know how long, decades. And so that was so charming. But I also think another really solid part of the hero's journey is the atonement. Right? It's atonement with the Father, but it's essentially, confronting that thing that you feel has the most power over you. That's something I need to. I think that I will benefit from keeping in mind as I'm addressing these things that I feel are bigger than me. It's like, no, just face it. Just face it. Stand up to it. And that's where the gold is, right? The gold is right beyond that dragon you have to slay. It's those things that you fear the most that provide the greatest reward, I think.
Yes.
So those are some hits from the hero's journey. And anybody who's listening who hasn't started at the beginning, those episodes are all there waiting for you. And yes, there is a sequence to the hero's journey, but there's no need to listen to our conversation in any sequence because we discuss what the subject is, and you don't really need to be tutored on that before just listening. But in moving forward with this freedom to live concept, we talked a little bit about being in the moment, and we talked a little bit about what it means to be afraid of death and what it means to be able to look at that more squarely in the face and say, okay, you exist, but you're not going to diminish my experience of being alive, right? Because I'm afraid of you. How do you see this playing out, this freedom to live, if we were to look at it in terms of, so what do we do with that? How do our lives, how do we benefit from this understanding?
You mean if we completely had it?
Right. If we were actually achieved that as heroes in our own journey, how do you think that might change the way you go about your life? What would be less of a thing? What would be more of a thing?
At least for me, because I'm trying to get there with certain parts of what I'm doing, I would be even more spontaneous and less concerned about the money side of it and how much is that going to cost if I want to go try that, or I want to go do this project. Let's invest in that. Lindsay being a filmmaker, she's got all these great ideas, and I'm like, just tell me what you want to do, and we'll put a budget together and we'll do it. And she's like, it's like that's where my brain is. It's like, let's just do it. Let's just do it.
Right.
I think that I would be even further along in terms of that. Not being irresponsible, but just being more spontaneous with really being in the moment. I have a few friends that are the kinds of travelers who have a destination, but they're like, oh, well, we're going to take a week to get from here to here. And I don't know I don't know what we're going to do between those two things. We're going to stop off here and go, we saw this museum and we were driving through this town. And people who do that, I'm always in awe of that. I'm like, wow. So you mean you didn't even have like an itinerary? You just did that and just, and then came home and dealt with it like, now the bills are coming in. We'll just deal with it when they come in. Like you just did it. That to me is where I think I would be.
Right.
I also
this proposes a huge challenge to your self-diagnosed OCD.
Of course it does. And I think one of the main factors to why at least I have not reached that, and maybe you can relate to this as well, I feel that my responsibility for other people is still the priority. I feel like as a parent, as a partner, whatever it is, I feel like I am not an individual on this journey. If I didn't have any other responsibilities in terms of people, I probably would be closer to that achievement. But because I have these responsibilities, and I choose to have them, I don't think I could be that frivolous and spontaneous because there are things that I need to do to make sure that there are things for my kids, my stepkids, my wife. You being a father, there are people that I know that have no attachments. They have nothing that ties them down, and they can do that stuff. They can live that life. And I don't mean that they have all these things that I don't have. I have things that they don't have. It's not a competition.
Sure.
But
I understand.
But it's the freedom to just go, and I'm going. I mean, both you and I, when we want to go on go to an event, if people check our avail, the amount of moving parts it takes for the two of us to be able to leave our home and go and do these things.
You have jet.
I have jet. I have, I have to board my dog. He's too big to just leave at someone's house. He won't chew up things, but I have jet, right? But we have things that we have to coordinate.
Right. None of these things are crises.
No.
But they're all things that need management.
And they require, that's the stress that's there. That's the planning that's there.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the difference, is that if I were able to not worry about any of that other stuff, I would be much more spontaneous and would just do stuff.
I worry more about not getting back home on time than I do about not getting to the convention on time.
I hear you.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I would suggest that even in the balance of all the completely rational concerns about being integrated with the people in your life and the people that depend on you, that there's a place in between, a blend, right?
Yeah,
where you could probably still balance all of those things, enjoy a greater sense of spontaneity and freedom.
Yes,
And
I'm getting there.
In the moment. Yes.
I'm getting there, and it's definitely more towards the spontaneous, approach to things, and just do it. I want to just do it. But that would be the final thing that would push it over, the top.
Right.
Is that if I were truly just only paying attention to my own world. But that's never going to happen, because even if I didn't have these people around me, I'd find other people that I would care about and I would worry about.
And you're a planner.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a strategizer.
I am definitely. How about you?
Well, I think that carefree, that example you gave, though, is also echoes something that you've said. It's the journey, not the destination.
Mm-hmm.
Those people, but which is something that you do understand on a fundamental level. I think you do live in that way largely. But back to me, I think I am clear about what I would be like at my most free, at my most engaged in the stuff that I want to, that is most compelling to me.
Mm-hmm.
And being a father doesn't really conflict with that. Of course, you only have so much time in a day, right? But I'm down with being a dad. I don't see that as a contradiction to these other things. It took so long to be able to become a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I lost a lot on the way, but I want to make the most out of that, right? As opposed to having it feel like it's obstacle,
right,
to these other things. And I also think appreciating, the moment that you're in, the day-to-day, what it's like. Your daughters are older,
mm-hmm.
but what it's like when they're going from 5 years old to 10 years old. There's so much that happens.
Yep.
And it's a cliche, but people's, they say time flies. Yes, that changes as you age.
Yep.
It does literally feel like time. Obviously, time's not moving any faster, but that's the way you experience it. But also to have that benchmarked by kids who are growing, it's like, gosh, it really does just go by so quickly.
It does.
And for those of you who aren't parents, forgive the sappiness, but there is something that is extraordinarily magical and unique about it.
Well, yeah. Well, it changes perspective when you are now really responsible for someone else's,
well-being, and formation.
And you have twins. So it was like,
oh, that's right. There's two of them. That explains everything.
Yeah. No, but you're right. It's, it goes by quickly, and those years are very important. You don't want to miss that stuff. And my older daughter is getting married in June. So, it
That's
really
amazing.
does go quickly. But yes, your responsibilities are, to me, a positive to who you are.
Right.
They are.
Right. Well, I'm so enriched by this, right? And having children that love you, or at least tell you that they love you, is a very wonderful thing. And some people would speculate that the hardest thing about being a single parent is you got to manage this load, more of it than you would if you had a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's true. I don't really know anything different. So, but one thing that I often think of is I wish I had someone like a partner that I was sharing this with
mm-hmm.
to help me remember all the times.
Right.
To reflect on. So.
Yeah.
So that's why I keep myself under a constant state of surveillance.
and why you and I talk to each other at least every 5 to 10 minutes.
Well, that doesn't hurt.
So do you think that that added responsibility, the fact that you are that single parent, is the is the thing that makes you fear death even more?
I certainly fear my children's deaths. And hey, we live in a society where, and I'm not getting political.
No.
It's simply true that we have mass shootings every day.
Yes.
And they're taking place in schools.
Yes.
And elsewhere. But that's a very different relationship to safety than I grew up with.
So,
Not that there weren't risks when we were growing up.
right.
know.
So you're
But-
more
but-
afraid of their death
Oh.
than
Well-
your death and not being there
Prematurely-
and not being there
Right,
for
right.
them.
That sounds really selfish, but yeah, actually, and another reason is as tragic as it would be for them to lose me. I know my family. I know my wife's family. These kids aren't falling through the cracks.
So that's interesting. There's a security to that. A very, very, we that's a scenario we do not want to even,
Of course not.
But
of course,
but there's more security in your mind with that than having to deal with loss. Of course, no one wants to outlive their children. I get that.
right.
But
Right.
it
and I recognize that sounds a little selfish.
no,
'cause,
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that that's actually a very valid point. To dovetail on that, like my mother is taking care of my stepfather, and yesterday we were having a chat about life and death, and she wasn't feeling well because my mother gets her stress, it affects her health. That's what happens when she's dealing with all this, and she's like, I just don't know what would happen if I wasn't here, and that
Right.
if I went first,
right.
and I'm like.
Right. And that's a different scenario.
Yeah, and
I'm in.
Yeah, and so I said, "Well, I got it. I'm there for you.
Right,
You don't have to worry about that." But it's interesting to think about fearing your own death because you wouldn't be there to take care of someone, as opposed to fearing their death because you wouldn't want to deal with the emotional.
Well,
yeah.
It's not just about me experiencing that pain. It's about them being deprived of a life.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, I get it.
That horrifies me.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. I get it. I get it.
So, but I do feel like, while it would, of course, nobody wants this, and it would be very hard for them. But I know they're not just my family is integrated, right? I know exactly who they would go to, right? And if that didn't work out, there's two other options that would be just as good, right?
Right.
I have people in my family who are wonderful parents and have wonderful kids, right? So they could at least go to someone that they've grown up with,
Right.
right? They wouldn't be orphaned, right? Or, I mean, they would be orphaned, but they wouldn't be like, having to be, hooked up with somebody who's looking for orphans,
Right.
right?
So-
They would just be absorbed into the family.
So you actually are one step closer to that end.
To accepting the most negative
For
consequences
yourself.
of my passing.
Yes.
Right. The most important thing in my life, it wouldn't be easy, but there's a net there.
Yeah, and no, it's interesting that because that's part of the end of this journey.
Yeah.
You actually have a little bit more closure and understanding about that part of it than maybe I do.
Right.
Yeah. So I
And also, it's something that I survived.
oh yeah, I know.
Right.
I know.
So I understand that it can be, it is something that one can survive.
Mm-hmm.
But also on the more upside
Yes.
of this question, the freedom to live.
Yes.
For me, that's more doing like what we're doing with Andromeda.
Yes.
I've recently finished recording a bunch of material that took over a month to do, and the material itself was well written. It's no issue with that. It just wasn't what I really wanted to do, and it's also the kind of work I've done many, many times before.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I always want to do the best job I can possibly do. But sometimes part of what makes that job hard is that you just aren't in it.
Mm-hmm.
You'd really rather be doing anything else.
Yeah. Yes.
Again, no offense to the material, right? It's me having done too much of that, right? That's all that's about. So when we finally were releasing the podcast, that we had started recording long before, that we were talking about years before, when we finally started releasing that really helped my internal weather system.
Yeah.
And I felt like, okay, at least I'm making good on one promise. And I'm actually enjoying, obviously, the process with you. I mean, we joke and, jibe each other.
Yep.
But it's really been wonderful. And also to include the people that we have on, but also to have this dialogue with our fans that we wouldn't have had otherwise, which goes way beyond the what is your favorite episode of whatever, which is a fun question. But I think the breadth of this conversation is, to me, much more interesting and more and something that hasn't been explored, right, with this community.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, but this, as you know, this isn't the only thing. Crossing the Gods, while it's taking a long time, we thought we were going to be able to release years before, but we changed the paradigm. And for something that's an animated series you could do it as a feature, but we really think of it as a series. It's taking about the right amount of time, the average amount of time to get it, done. So, but I wrote that short story that we're going to translate into audio. I'm doing more illustrating than I've done, which is very rewarding. So, and I understand somebody listening to this might just say, "Well, you just want to play. That's all you want to do with your life." You're not wrong. I do, but I wanted to do it in a way that also seems to be something that other people enjoy, right?
Yeah, but you and I both use the same tools to do our quote unquote job that we use to also create our fun. We use the same tools.
It's true.
So because of that, I think it becomes a little bit for me more frustrating when I am doing 3 hours of recording something that is not necessarily where my with that and I'm not knocking the work, but it's it's the same tools. So it's not like I can put that one down and move on to, the fun stuff. If I want to go sing a vocal on a new song, I've just exhausted my voice speaking for 3.5 hours or whatever.
Right.
I can't.
That just happened to you recently.
Yeah, I can't do that. And so I think it's great that you're doing all of these other things, the way that you want to do it. I don't think you're just having fun. You work incredibly hard at your fun.
Right.
You do.
Right. Right, because you don't want it to suck.
Yeah, I mean, just even yesterday,
especially sharing it with other people.
When you shared what you were working on right now, the drawing that you're working on, I couldn't believe
the Kaiba drawing.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how much you had accomplished, in one day.
Right.
I just was like, wow, like this is cool. And yeah, it does make me question like your full career choice, because like you're an incredible actor, but you're also an incredible artist.
Well, that's very kind.
But it's true. Like you say, I look at this and I'm like, wow. And you're like, yeah, I'm still tweaking a couple things. And I'm like, this is fantastic, and I'm not easily pleased. I'm like, or easily impressed. I'm like, this is great. When are we printing this one up? But yes, but I think your freedom to live is because we're trying to build this company. We're trying to get out there and see the fans and do these events and have these great experiences as well, which is also motivating us to create and share. So it's all one
and
big
grow.
Yeah, it's one big happy circle.
Yeah, and that's another. I think growing is another inevitable part of life, right? If you're really living in a full way, you're growing as a person. You're potentially growing new relationships, right? And opportunities and experiences, and it's also been very rewarding to attend conventions, which I obviously have not done as much, but I am doing more of, and it's not because of the praise. Of course, that's always wonderful to hear, and I'm always so humbled by it. But it's to me, it's exciting because I get to be around people who are enthusiastic. That they're enthusiastic about me is great, but it's just that they're a lively community. They're engaged.
Mm-hmm.
They're in their own moment. I was so delighted in Orlando that a number of people said, "This is my first time coming to a convention."
Yeah.
And I said to them, "So did you feel like finally I've met my own people?" And they were like, "Yes, that's exactly what it feels like."
Right.
That's what a wonderful sense of community can provide.
Yes.
And,
when you get jaded by the real world, go to an anime convention and go experience like the acceptance, the diversity, the fun, the energy. Yeah. Go do that. Go do that.
Yeah. No haters.
No, not at all. But yeah, yes, it's been so helpful for my own, just outlook on life. This smaller convention I did last weekend where I really had more time to talk to the people that came up to the table. It just was, I don't even pay attention to this. I've got some scripted thing that I need to say or whatever. It's just engaging and talking to people. And there was one other guest there who said to me in one of the breaks, "Wow, you're just so nice to your fans." Now, you might be a fan that says that's not true. Eric was really mean to me one time, but I'll disagree. And I'm like, well, they want to talk to me. That's kind of like a weird bonus to my crazy existence. I do what I do because it's what I do. And this part of it is like, where did this come from? If someone wants to spend the time to interact with me and have a conversation, I want to find out what they're all about too. This is that whole thing about listening and meeting people.
Right.
So don't miss those opportunities. If you are a potential guest to these events, don't take that for granted. Don't take that moment for granted. Really enjoy it. You will find that there's inspiration from those conversations.
Yeah. Some of my favorite exchanges are the people that just want to say hi.
Yeah.
They don't have something for me to sign.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
And they still wait in line. I'm like, wow.
I don't even wait in line to see you.
Well, you shouldn't. I mean,
no.
That would be a little... If I were Lindsay, I'd be like, "Okay, Eric, we have to talk."
Yeah, we have to go.
we have to talk about your girlfriend.
Yeah. Well, when I get texts from you at all hours of the night, or like she's like, "Oh, is that Dan?" I'm like, "Yes. Who else is it? You're here with me. Of course, it's Dan."
I'm sorry, Lindsay.
She loves you. She loves you.
Oh, I love her. I love her right back. And her artwork is so cool.
Yeah, that was another great moment this weekend. She was sitting with me for a lot of the event, and we had her creation, her original art creation of the Blue Eyes White Dragon on the table. And I didn't put a little sign up that said that she was the artist or anything like that. And fans came up and were like, "What is that? Is so cool. I've never seen that before. That's the coolest Blue Eyes White Dragon I've ever seen." And she's hearing this. And then I would say, "Well, that's really great. And also, this is the artist right here." And they're like, "Wow, well, I'm definitely getting that." And some of them even just said, "I'm definitely getting that," before I even said this was the artist. And to see my wife react to not just her husband saying her art is great, but complete strangers with no, lead in from me.
Right.
When that kind of feedback was really
great. The quality
great.
of the artwork is what generated that response.
Yeah, she let me tweet out a picture of her holding the artwork. Like, she was proud of that moment. And that meant so much to me, to see someone who has that self-doubt about their abilities and is very talented to actually get that euphoric moment. Like, that was cool. Even if she wasn't my wife, just witnessing that of someone saying, "I like what you created, that only you could do."
Right. It doesn't really get much better than that.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. So that's and we're going to see more from Lindsay.
Yeah.
Right. She's creating more stuff.
Yeah, she's working on a whole bunch of my characters in her style, which and also we're going to see a bunch from you as well. I love that part of what we do. I love it. I love the including the people around us in that sort of creativity. But I want to see Dan Green's take on Kaiba and the Pharaoh. I want to see, Lindsay's take on Squirtle. I want to see that,
Yeah. And it's fun.
Yeah.
And as well as being just, rewarding in other ways. But that freedom to live, I think it's easier for us being at the age we are to make that more of a priority. We understand that we probably have, more years behind us than ahead, unless we live to be an extremely old age.
Yes, right. Methuselah.
That's right. But that's not a negative thing. I'm grateful for the time I've had, and I appreciate that. I need to make the most of what's left, and so a more crass way of putting this is that you know what kind of crap you're not going to put up with anymore.
Yes,
right. Or it's like that's not compelling to me. I'm just not going to participate with that. And there are things that I definitely would have said yes to or accepted at earlier stages in my life, but now, no.
Yeah,
no.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So, well, and I think also we got some amazing fans that are with us too.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it even more valuable, more precious.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think we should draw this to a close, our discussion today.
Let's do it.
And it's been an honor discussing the hero's journey with you, among so many other things.
Yeah, you too.
These last several months. But this is by no means the end, our lovely listeners. We are going to be back next week, and we will be talking about Andromeda Productions.
Mm-hmm.
What the heck is that supposed to be about?
Yeah.
And maybe we'll talk a little bit about the origin, but also what's more exciting to me is where we intend to take it and what we intend to do with it and who we are hoping to work with, who we've already been working with, and what that can mean for you as fans who like stories told by actors.
Yeah. And also just seeing what these two creative guys are up to and the many different directions we're going to just, satisfy that creative drive that we have. I think you guys will be happy with that. And hopefully it inspires you to do your thing too out there.
Right. We are so lucky to be appreciated by you as a fan base for work that is in our past. And we can't wait to make you fans of what we're doing now. And to go back to part of that quote, nothing retains its own form, but nature, the greater renewer, ever makes up forms from forms. Well, we're not exactly going to be in the Pokemon Yu-Gi-Oh world, which is how we got to know each other, but what we're making next isn't the same, but is essentially as good, or that's what we're striving for.
Mm-hmm.
So, thanks again for being a part of this journey with us, and we look forward to the next time where we can share a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what we're dealt.
Thanks for listening to The Heart of the Cards with Dan Green and Eric Stuart. We hope this conversation in some way spoke to you. Whatever your journey, we look forward to crossing paths again in the next episode. This is Veronica Taylor, and on behalf of Andromeda Productions, we wish you well.
Andromeda, always a sound choice.